Since Mastermind started in 1972, only 36 people have received the famous glass bowl and claimed the highest honour the quiz world has to offer, the right to call themselves Mastermind champion. Tonight, we will find out who will join this illustrious group. From the 96 contenders who have taken part in this series, 6 finalists have emerged. Who will be crowned the nation's mastermind? First in the spotlight tonight is Gareth Williams, a school teacher from Gloucestershire. He's answering questions on the Falklands War. Next, Marianne Fairthorne, a quantitative analyst from London on the Italian noblewoman Caterina Sforza. Liz Gore is a researcher, also from London. Her subject, the Raj Quartet novels of Paul Scott. John Bainan, a gardener from Northwich, takes as his subject the 19th century Prime Minister Viscount Palmerston. David Greenwood, a programme manager from Surrey, answers questions on Ashes cricket. And Diane Halligan is an assistant accountant from Leeds. Her subject, the great Rudolph Nureyev. Hello and welcome to the Mastermind Grand Final with me, John Humphrys. So, it comes down to this. Tonight's finalists have seen off the other 90 contenders, but to claim the big prize, this one final challenge awaits. They know the rules by now, as I'm sure you do as well. 2 minutes on their specialist subject and 2.5 minutes on general knowledge. The winner will take home the beautiful engraved glass bowl and the right to say, I am the Mastermind champion. So let's get on with it and ask our first finalist to join us, please. And your name is?
Gareth Williams.
Your occupation?
School teacher.
And your chosen subject?
The Falklands conflict.
Mr. Speaker, sir, British sovereign territory has been invaded by a foreign power. The government has now decided that a large task force will sail as soon as all preparations are complete. HMS Invincible will be in the lead and will leave port on Monday.
Well, I was 4 years old when Britain went to reclaim the Falklands after the Argentine invasion in 1982. And I suppose it's the first thing I can remember on the television from when I was a youngster. I remember watching the pictures of the Harriers taking off from the Hermes and Invincible from sitting in my grandmother's lounge.
Gareth, welcome on board. David Price.
Hello. So I'm here in Portsmouth on HMS Bristol. She's the only ship still in service from the Falklands conflict. HMS Bristol was decommissioned in the early 90s, 1991 I think, and then was recommissioned pretty quickly after to serve as a training ship in Portsmouth Harbour for cadets but also for the full-time military.
She sailed in the second wave really of ships that went south and was there before the end of the conflict and then took over the flagship duties from HMS Hermes. The ship had fantastic command and control facilities, so she was able to support the air battle during the Falklands conflict.
Well, I suppose I've got a special connection with the Navy really, in as much as I was in the Naval Reserve for 16 years, and I remember particularly being on Bristol when I was a cadet, back in the early 90s actually. When you stand on the flight deck here and you think about actually the ship went to war in 1982, it makes you think actually what it might have been like. I'm a bit of a geek for military history, really. One of my specialist subjects from the first round was the Battle of the Somme. I find it interesting, other people may not. There was no one more surprised than me to be here in the grand final for Mastermind. I think my pupils will be very surprised that I've got this far, but I think the thing that I'm dreading the most is if I don't win, will they let me live it down?
The Falklands conflict in 2 minutes, starting now. A scrap metal merchant and his workmen arrived on South Georgia in March 1982 and hoisted an Argentinian flag, prompting the British government to send the ice patrol ship HMS Endurance to the island. What was the merchant's name?
Pass.
Which inlet on East Falkland was given the nickname Bomb Alley because of the constant air attacks on landing forces?
San Carlos Water.
Yes, after December 1981, the Argentinian junta comprised General Galtieri, Brigadier Basilio Lamidoso, and an admiral whose force had operational responsibility during the conflict. Who was he?
Busa.
No, Jorge Anaya. Who was the American Secretary of State at the time of the Falklands conflict whose shuttle diplomacy failed to produce a peaceful resolution?
Haig.
Yes. What was the name of the Argentine Navy's only aircraft carrier which sailed from Puerto Belgrano at the end of March?
25 de Mayo.
Yes. What was the name of the British garrison barracks near Port Stanley that was the first site to be attacked by Argentine forces on the 2nd of April?
Moody Brook.
Correct. At what distance in nautical miles from the centre of the Falklands Islands was the total exclusion zone set? It came into force on the 30th of April.
200.
Yes. Whom did General Galtieri appoint as Foreign Minister of Argentina, a post he held throughout the conflict?
Menendez.
No, Mendez. Which settlement, the second largest on the islands, was the scene of a major battle on the 28th of May?
Goose Green.
Correct. 2 Argentine Naval Special Force units operated during the conflict, the Commandos Anfibios and a second group made up Marine Commandos, the equivalent of the British Special Boat Squadron. What were they called?
Forza Especial.
No, Debuzos Tácticos. What type of RAF bomber flew from Ascension Island to bomb the runway at Stanley Airfield?
Vulcan.
Yes. At which ruined building at the foot of Darwin Hill did an Argentine machine gun post hold up the advancing paratroopers in the Battle of Goose Green?
Burnside House.
Boca House. What code name was given to the British military action in the Falklands conflict run from northward?
Operation Corporate.
Correct. In early May, an unsuccessful 7-point peace plan was put forward by Belaúnde Terry, who was the president of which country?
Peru.
Is correct. 1 pass. Gareth, the name of that scrap metal merchant was Konstantino Davidov. You have scored 9 points. And our next contender, please. And your name is?
Marianne Fairthorne.
Your occupation?
Quantitative analyst.
And your chosen subject?
Caterina Sforza.
Feels really cool being here. I used to love running around castles in Wales when I was little, and if someone had told me then that there was a woman in charge of one of these castles sort of leading their troops with a sword, I'd have absolutely loved it. So it really kind of takes me back to being a little girl running around castles. We're in Forlì in northern Italy, and this is the Rocca di Ravaldino, which is where Caterina Sforza stood up to the people who captured her children and assassinated her husband in 1488. She lived in very interesting times. She grew up as the daughter of a very powerful duke and then married the favourite nephew of a pope. She's likely to have met Da Vinci and Michelangelo as well. She'll have been mixing in this kind of company. After her first husband was assassinated and her children were captured, she talked her way into the fortress saying, "You have my children, what could happen?" And the story you hear is that she came to this point, turned back at the people with her children, lifted up her skirt and said, "I've got everything I need to make more, you fools," and then turned the artillery on the town. There were no men standing up to these people in the same way she was doing it either. So she is a totally incredible character, and she's certainly very famous at the time for it. At the museum we're seeing a painting that's probably of Caterina Sforza when she was about the same age as I am now. I haven't seen any portraits or even portraits that are supposed to be of her before. She does look really determined, doesn't she? The stories that you hear about her sort of executing people and holding fortresses and stuff, you can actually see that, I think. She does look like someone you wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of, certainly. It would be amazing if I won the grand final. It shouldn't matter that not very many women have won it, but a little part of me thinks it does matter. It would be, I think, a little bit more special to be one of very few women to have won it in the Humphrys era.
Caterina Sforza in 2 minutes, starting now. Caterina Sforza was an illegitimate daughter of the Duke of Milan. To whom was she betrothed in 1473 at the age of 10?
Girolamo Riario.
Correct. Caterina is said to have become a favourite of the Pope, who was the uncle of Riario. What is the Pope's name?
Sixtus IV.
Yes, when she was besieged in the fortress of Rivaldino, Caterina received 2 letters suggesting that she should marry Antonio Maria Ordelaffi. What were the letters attached to?
Arrows.
Yes. Which Borgia Pope claimed that Caterina tried to poison him?
Alexander VI.
Yes, what was the name of Caterina's stepmother who looked after the Duke of Milan's illegitimate children by Lucretia Landriana, as well as her own?
Bona of Savoy.
Yes, what second name was given to Caterina's son, Giovanni Riario? It was the name of the traditional founder of Forlì.
Livio.
Yes, after the death of Pope Sixtus IV in 1484, which Roman fortress did Caterina capture while she was heavily pregnant?
Castle St. Angelo.
Correct. What fever, a type of malaria, did Caterina first have in October 1482? She had recurrent attacks for the rest of her life.
Corton fever.
Yes. Caterina's husband, Giovanni, whom she secretly married in September 1497, belonged to a branch of which powerful Florentine family?
Medici.
Yes. In which palace was Caterina first imprisoned when Cesare Borgia took her to Rome? After she tried to escape, she was moved to the Castle Sant'Angelo.
Belvedere.
Yes. What was the name of the former stable groom who became her lover and may have married her in secret? He was murdered in 1495.
Giacomo Feo.
Yes, Caterina was known for her chemical experiments and was often sent new ingredients and recipes. One recipe was for a special cream used by the celebrated beauty, the Marquise of Mantua. What was her name?
Isabella d'Este.
Yes. What was the nationality of the captain who captured Caterina at Ravaldino? She was placed under the custody of his king because his country did not allow women to be prisoners of war.
French.
Yes. One of Caterina's fortresses was stormed and ransacked by French and Milanese troops in 1494 after she made an alliance with Naples and the Pope. Which fortress?
Moradano.
Yes. What was the name of Caterina's military commander who was blamed when the fortress of Ravaldino fell to Cesare Borgia? He was also said to be her lover.
De Cassale.
Yes, Giovanni di Cassale. Marianne, no passes, nothing wrong. You've scored 15 points. And our next contender, please. And your name is?
Liz Gore.
Your occupation?
Researcher.
And your chosen subject?
Paul Scott's Raj Quartet. I chose the Raj Quartet because it's been a favourite work of mine for about 30 years. Which I first started reading when it was televised, and I was a child. They were written by Paul Scott.
Hello.
And he wrote the books from the mid-60s to the mid-70s.
I'm afraid everyone else is lying down. I'm waiting for the fireflies to come out.
It's a fictional story. It's set in fictional places, but the events that they describe are set against reality.
August 1947. The British are quitting India nearly 200 years after they took power. One country will now become two, India and Pakistan.
As a reader, there are many things I like about the novels. The story itself, the characterisation, and the beautiful descriptions of India. It's a scary thought that every single one of these pages could have a question for John Humphrys to ask me. I'm going to the Asian and African Studies reading room because it has one of the widest collections of artefacts from the end of the Raj. It's a document from the Secretary of State for India relating to the transfer of power. This is what all 4 books are leading up to. 3 books about the British rule, and then the final book is when India and Pakistan got self-government. Mr. Gandhi, Mr. Nehru. It's fascinating, and it's part of this enormous collection. It makes it so much more real. I'm really proud to have reached the grand final of Mastermind, but having got this far, wouldn't it be nice to win?
Raj Quartets in 2 minutes, beginning now. The Raj Quartet explores the ramifications of one violent incident in British India. What English public school did one of the central characters, Hari Kumar, attend as part of his father's strategy for preparing him to play a part in the British administration of India?
Chillingborough.
Yes, Hari Kumar is falsely accused of taking part in the violent rape of the English woman Daphne Manners. In which city does the assault take place?
Mayapur.
Yes, in the Day of the Scorpion, which regiment does the young John Layton declare his intention of joining when he was asked by his father, what's it to be, the administration or the army?
1st Pancot Rifles.
Yes, what is the name of the British officer who's to be the best man at the wedding of Teddy Bingham and Susan, but who falls ill with jaundice and has to be replaced by Ronald Merrick?
Tony Bishop.
Correct. What does Barbie Batchelor send to Susan as a combined wedding and 21st birthday present?
Apostle Spoons.
Yes, in A Division of the Spoils, what pseudonym meaning lightweight or counterfeit is adopted by the subversive cartoonist Shankar Lal, previously known as Bopa?
Halki.
Yes, what is the name of the editor of the Mayapur Gazette who employs Hari Kumar as a sub-editor in place of the radical Vidyasagar?
Laxmanarayan.
Yes, what significant object is left outside Teddy and Merrick's quarters? It's described as rusted and surrounded by Kabbalistic chalk marks.
Bicycle.
Yes, baby Edward is placed in a ring of burning kerosene by his widowed mother, Susan. By what name is the Indian servant who rescues him known?
Minnie.
Yes, in The Towers of Silence, what historical event of 1919 is euphemistically referred to as the General Dyer business?
The Amritsar Massacre.
Yes, what is the name of the Indian official who, with Captain Rowan, interviews Hari Kumar to try and discover the truth about the assault on Daphne?
Gopal.
Yes, what word is found scrawled on the mirror in the bedroom where the scheming Merrick is found violently murdered?
Bibigar.
Correct. What is the name of the scholar and Hindu nationalist whom Ahmed Kasim first encounters at the home of Professor Nair?
Pandit Baba.
Yes, immediately after her terrible accident on Club Road, a bloodied Barbie entered the rectory bungalow, declared that she had seen the devil and asked for what object?
Spade.
Yes, who walked to the bank each Wednesday to collect her husband's pension with a locked leather bag attached to her waist by a chain?
Sister Ludmilla.
Is correct. Liz, no passes for you either, and you've also got them all right. 15 points. And now, next contender, please. And your name is?
John Bainan.
Your occupation?
Gardener.
And your chosen subject?
3rd Viscount Palmerston. I'm interested in history, and the whole of the first half of the 19th century, British history and politics, but if you want one standout figure in that era, it's Lord Palmerston. Never been to House of Parliament before, absolutely fantastic. You see these buildings on television, on the news. I've never ever been anywhere close to them. St Stephen's Hall was the debating chamber of the House of Commons before the Great Fire, and it was the place where he gave his first speech as a Member of Parliament. Palmerston was in here over 200 years ago, and this must have been the place where Lord North lost the American colonies as well. So, I expected it to be a bigger space, a wider space than this. Certainly beautiful space anyway. Palmerston had quite a number of different nicknames. He was called Lord Palmerston because of his abrasive character. One of his other names was Lord Cupid because of his numerous love affairs throughout his life. This will be the 7th time actually I've sat in the chair.
And your name is?
John Bainan.
Your occupation?
Gardener.
And your chosen subject?
Life and Writings of Gilbert White. I've reached the semi-final but just missed out on the final. This is the first time I've actually reached the final, the grand final.
First place, 23 points. John Bainan.
I'm conflicted about it, actually. Some part of me enjoys it, and some part of it definitely doesn't enjoy it. I like the study, I like the preparation, getting to grips with the subject and answering the questions on the subject, but the tension in the studio, because I get as nervous as a kitten, it can usually sink me. Henry John Temple, 3rd Viscount Palmerston. Finally come face to face with the predominant statesman of mid-Victorian politics and history. Causing me a lot of hassle at the moment. Well, it would mean an awful lot to me if I won the grand final Mastermind. I don't want to finish last because no one wants to finish last, but I don't want to finish second because that's the worst position to finish in.
Viscount Palmerston in 2 minutes. Here we go. In October 1809, Palmerston was appointed Secretary of War after he refused to accept the post of Chancellor of the Exchequer. What was the name of the Prime Minister who appointed him?
Spencer Perceval.
Yes, Lord Palmerston made his famous Civis Romana Sum speech in a parliamentary debate defending the government's aggressive stance towards which country?
Greece.
Yes. From which Prime Minister's government did Palmerston and a group of other MPs resign in 1828?
Wellington.
Yeah. Which Cambridge college did Palmerston attend after leaving Edinburgh University in 1803?
St John's.
Correct. Whom did Palmerston appoint as Foreign Secretary when he became Prime Minister for the first time in 1855?
Pass.
Which 1857 bill did Prime Minister Palmerston force through Parliament? It made divorce in England a civil rather than religious matter.
Matrimonial causes.
Yes. Palmerston's first seat in Parliament, the pocket borough of Newport, Isle of Wight, was bought by him from Sir Leonard Holmes. How much did he pay for it?
£1,500.
£4,000. In 1862, Palmerston was elected as rector of which Scottish university?
Glasgow.
Yes. What was the name of the French king whose forced abdication prompted Palmerston to write to Charles Grant, "What a glorious event this is in France, how admirably the French have done it"?
Louis Philippe.
No, Charles X. Which treaty of 1833 between the Ottoman Empire and Russia was a setback for Palmerston's foreign policy?
Unkia Scalisi.
Yes. Palmerston reputedly joked that he was one of only 3 men who'd ever understood a famous question concerning European diplomacy, but one of them was dead, the second was mad, and he had forgotten the answer. What was the question?
The Schleswig-Holstein problem.
It was indeed. Which royal order was bestowed on Palmerston in 1832 by King William IV?
Order of the Garter?
No, the Bath. After Palmerston's death in 1865, which prominent politician observed that death has indeed laid low the most towering antlers in all the forest?
Disraeli.
No, Gladstone. After the Earl of Derby resigned in June 1859, who was asked to form a government by Queen Victoria? When he was unable to do so, she invited Palmerston to form his second ministry.
Lord Derby?
No, Lord Granville. 1 past, John. Palmerston appointed as Foreign Secretary when he became Prime Minister for the first time in 1855, Lord Clarendon. You have scored 8 points. And our next finalist, please. And your name is?
David Greenwood.
Your occupation?
Programme Manager.
And your chosen subject?
The Ashes, England versus Australia, 1964 to 1981. Well, I'm passionate about cricket and passionate about the Ashes.
Morning.
It's something I know quite a bit about already, but it's a great pleasure to, to research it in the detail I need to do to answer questions on Mastermind. Oh, we're at Lord's Cricket Ground, which is just the home of cricket. And it's also the home of the Ashes.
Well, it's not much to look at, but it represents the greatest rivalry in sport, and it means everything to cricket lovers in both England and Australia.
It's going for 137 years now, and it's still as vital and still as keen as ever. It is a great contest, and a contest that's played in a very hard way, but also in a fair and good-spirited way.
Fortunately for England, opening batsman John Edrich is still there. The Yorkshireman Phil Sharp on the left goes to the wicket with him.
The first time I actually watched the Ashes on television was in 1964 at the beginning of this period. And it's just carried on since then, really. 1964 to 81 was just full of phenomenal players, phenomenal performances and great events, particularly towards the end, when England won the Ashes in Jubilee year in '77, and then we had Botham's year when he just won the Ashes almost single-handedly in 1981. I've been looking at Mastermind for a long time, and I'm the kind of person who sort of shouts answers at the screen, things like that. So my kids used to say, well, they used to say two things. A, he can't hear you, Dad, and the second is, why don't you go on? Must have seen 5 or 6 Ashes tests here, I should think, over the years. And it's fantastic. It's such a great feeling walking out here. It's amazing, really. Amazing. I never thought I would be in the final. I thought I would just enjoy myself and have a nice time. But of course, it's now getting a bit serious. So yes, I'm here to win.
So the Ashes in 2 minutes. Here we go. Who captained England on the 1970-71 tour when the Ashes were regained after 12 years?
Illingworth.
Yes. Who took 41 wickets in the 78-79 series to set a new Australian record for the most wickets in an Ashes series?
Rodney Hogg.
Correct. At Headingley in 1981, Bob Willis took a career-best 8 wickets for 43 runs as England became the first team since 1894 to win a test after following on. Who was the last batsman to be dismissed?
Terry Alderman.
No, Ray Bright. In 1977 at Nottingham, Geoffrey Boycott scored a century on his return to Test cricket. Which Nottinghamshire player did he run out early in his innings?
Randall.
Yep. A famous photograph taken at the Oval Test in 1968 shows the entire England team fielding close to the bat as Derek Underwood took the last wicket. Which batsman had he trapped LBW?
Inverarity.
Correct. A series of injuries to the touring Australians led to Mike Whitney being brought into the side for the Old Trafford Test in 1981. He had started the summer playing club cricket for which team in Lancashire?
Ramsbottom?
No, Fleetwood. What was the name of the Australian captain in the 78-79 series? The team was missing many of its best players who were playing World Series cricket.
Yallop.
Yep. Who set an Australian record by taking 16 wickets on his Test debut at Lord's in 1972?
Massey.
Yes. In which year did the Ashes series consist of only 4 matches because it took place immediately after the Cricket World Cup?
1975.
Correct. Who was bowling when Geoffrey Boycott struck the boundary that took him to his 100th first-class century at Headingley in 1977?
Greg Chappell.
Correct. Who was the captain of the 1974-75 England team but dropped himself from the Sydney Test?
Deness.
Yes. What was the name of the ship's cook who became the first streaker at a test match in England when he ran naked across the pitch at Lord's in 1975?
Michael Angelo.
Yes. At which ground was the third test of the 1970-71 series abandoned without a ball being bowled?
Melbourne.
Yes. When Colin Cowdrey joined the 1974-75 touring party, it meant he had appeared on how many Ashes tours?
6.
Is correct. No passes. David, you have scored 12 points. And our final finalist, please. And your name is?
Diane Halligan.
Your occupation?
Assistant accountant.
And your chosen subject?
The life of Rudolph Nureyev. I can't think that there would be very many people in the world that hadn't heard of Nureyev. He's just an icon of ballet. In my opinion, he was the most influential dancer of the 20th century just because he brought something different. He just had something extra about him. It was here in St. Petersburg that Nureyev learned his craft. Because he studied at the Vaganova Institute, he learnt the traditional Russian way of dancing, but then he put his own spin on it, put his own gloss on it. Incredible, isn't it? Absolutely stunning. Some of them are almost unrecognisable as Nureyev, to be honest. This one obviously dancing the Sleeping Beauty, and this in Romeo and Juliet. And here he is with Mikhail Baryshnikov. Rudolph enrolled at the Vaganova when he was 17 years old, and this was actually very, very late for a dancer. They usually only took people up to the age of 14, but he was obviously exceptional. It's amazing to think that Nureyev himself was here in the 1950s doing these exact same exercises as these young boys are doing now. At the Mariinsky Theatre, I'm going to be able to go into the auditorium and even walk on the stage, which I'm very, very excited about. Nureyev was very unusual in that he actually bypassed the corps de ballet and went straight into starring roles and became an absolute star at the Mariinsky. Rudolph defected to the West in 1961 because he knew that if he stayed in Russia alone, he would very likely not be heard of in the rest of the world, and he did want to be a big star as well as wanting just to dance. I can't believe that I'm standing on the stage of the Mariinsky Theatre at last. It's just the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me. I'd absolutely love to win the grand final, obviously, but my main motivation now that I've been to St. Petersburg is just to try and do Nureyev justice. Winning would just be the icing on the cake.
Rudolph Nureyev in 2 minutes, starting now. The first ballet created for Nureyev's partnership with Margot Fonteyn was Marguerite and Armand, which premiered at the Royal Opera House in 1963. Who choreographed it?
Frederick Ashton.
Yes. What is the name of the Paris airport where Nureyev defected in June 1961?
Le Bourget.
Yes. What was Nureyev's first original work as a choreographer? It premiered at the Vienna State Opera in 1966 with a score by Hans Werner Henze.
Pass.
Ken Russell cast Nureyev in the title role of which 1977 film?
Valentino.
Yes. What 1971 ballet choreographed by Maurice Béjart to music by Mahler did Nureyev continue to dance throughout his life?
Songs of a Wayfarer.
Correct. When Nureyev was 7 years old, his mother smuggled the family into a gala performance of Song of the Cranes in their home city of Ufa. Which of the ballerinas made a lasting impression on him?
Nasrat Dinova.
Yes. Nureyev moved in with the Danish ballet star Erik Brun, whose invitation to join a Soviet company as a guest dancer was then rescinded. Which company?
Pass.
Nureyev and Fontaine were arrested on narcotics charges in July 1967 following an invitation to a party by ballet goers in which city?
San Francisco.
Correct. Which of Nureyev's new works was based on a novella of the same name by Henry James? It was first staged during his tenure as the artistic director at the Paris Opera Ballet in the 1980s.
Turn of a screw.
Washington Square. Of which politically neutral country did Nureyev accept citizenship in 1982?
Austria.
Yes, the Danish choreographer Flemming Flint created two new roles for Nureyev. The first was in the ballet Overcoat in 1989. The second was as which character in Death in Venice in 91?
Von Aschenberg.
No, Gustav von Aschenbach. What is the profession of Daniel Jalin, the character portrayed by Nureyev in the 1983 film Exposed?
Violinist.
Yes, on which small Caribbean island did Nureyev buy a seaside home in his later years?
St. Bart's.
St. Bart's or St. Bartholomew, yes. Nureyev died in hospital in Paris in 1993. In which Russian Orthodox cemetery near the city is he buried?
St. Genevieve des Bois.
Is correct. You had two passes. Brun's invitation to join a Soviet company was rescinded. It was the Bolshoi company. And Nureyev's first original work as a choreographer was Tancredi. You have scored, Diane, 10 points. Wow, fitting scores for the first round of a grand final. Let's have a look at all of them. In sixth place, 8 points, John Bainan. Fifth place, 9 points, Gareth Williams. Fourth place, 10 points, Diane Halligan. Third place, 12 points, David Greenwood. Joint first place, 15 points apiece, Marianne Fairthorne and Liz Gore. So, all those months of hard work come down to this, the general knowledge round, which will decide it. 2.5 minutes of questions each, and then we shall know who is the nation's mastermind. If there's a tie, then the number of passes is taken into account, and the person with the fewer passes is the winner. And if they're tied on passes as well, there will have to be a tie break. We haven't had one of those yet in a grand final. Let's get on with it and ask John Bainan to join us again, please. And you start out with 8 points, John. 2.5 minutes, of course, of general knowledge. Here we go. A food critic and co-presenter of programmes such as MasterChef was the first celebrity voted off the 2014 series of Strictly Come Dancing. Who was he?
Greg Wallace?
Yep. Which food item is graded by size using the EU standard of small, meaning 53 grams, or under, to very large, meaning 73 grams or over? The system replaces an earlier one of sizing from 0 to 7.
X.
Yep. An American pop star who had her first UK hit with Holiday in 1984 has written a series of picture books for young children called The English Roses. What's her name?
Madonna.
Yes. Which country awards the Premio Planeta de Novela, the second most valuable literary prize in monetary terms after the Nobel Prize for Literature?
Italy.
Spain. What highly physical combat sport is contested at international level in the categories Greco-Roman and freestyle?
Wrestling.
Yep. Who replaced Michael Gove as Education Secretary in July 2014?
Nicky Morgan.
Yes. Which Canadian province is named after an alternative title for the House of Hanover to which King George III belonged?
New Brunswick.
Yes. Who co-starred in her second Bond film when she appeared in the 1967 version of Casino Royale as the former agent Vesper Lind?
Ursula Andress.
Yes. Which band reunited in 1993 to sing Don't Stop at Bill Clinton's inauguration ball? Clinton had used the song for his presidential campaign.
Fleetwood Mac.
Yes. The giant flightless bird, the kakapo, and the flesh-eating kea are both native to New Zealand. To which order of birds do they belong?
Parrot.
Yep. Which Czech composer was appointed director of the National Conservatory of Music in New York in 1892 and spent 3 years in America?
Dvorak.
Yes. An early medical practice involved removing a small piece of the skull in order to release evil spirits. The term for this operation comes from the name of the saw used. What is it?
Trepanning.
Yes. Who was the author of the best-selling 1970s novel Jaws? He later campaigned on ecological issues, including the need for shark conservation.
Michael Crichton.
Peter Benchley. What word that comes from the Latin for native or indigenous describes the spoken or written use of the language or dialect of a country or district?
Aboriginal.
Vernacular. Which Merseyside-born actor plays Al Capone in the television series Boardwalk Empire?
Pass.
Who was the chief of the Visigoths, whose army sacked Rome in 410? It was a decisive event in the decline of the Western Roman Empire.
Alaric.
Yes. On Ordnance Survey maps, what datum line was established from the average of measurements taken at Newlyn in Cornwall between 1915 and 1921?
Sea level.
Yes. The market town of Landi Kotal in Pakistan sits at the highest point of which strategic pass?
Khyber Pass.
The Khyber Pass is correct. You had one pass. The actor who played Al Capone in Boardwalk Empire was Stephen Graham. John, you made up a lot of ground there. You've a total of 22 points. And now Gareth again, please. And you start out with 9 points, Gareth, and the score to beat so far is 22. 2.5 minutes in which to do it. Here we go. The Bone Shaker was an early type of what form of transport?
Bicycle.
Yep. Whose radio and television career includes hosting Radio 2's Friday Night Art Show and BBC 2's Great British Sewing Bee?
Pass.
In which of the traditional 6 counties of Northern Ireland is Slieve Donard at the highest point in the province?
County Down.
Yes, in Samuel Beckett's 1953 absurdist play, what are Vladimir and Estragon doing that gives the play its title?
Waiting for Godot.
Yes, what is the slang term for the area in front of the stage at a rock concert where very physical and violent dancing takes place? It has its origins in America in 1988.
Mosh pit.
Yes. Which territory played its first competitive senior football match in September 2014 in a Euro 2016 qualifier against Poland, who beat them 7-0?
Andorra.
Gibraltar. What is the occupation of Tom, the hero of Charles Kingsley's The Water Babies, a novel that publicised the plight of child workers?
A boatman.
No, chimney sweep. The traditional dish of koi in Andean countries such as Ecuador and Peru consists of the meat of which animal?
Llama.
A guinea pig. What name is given to the device used in a computer network that typically incorporates a modem and allows connection to the internet?
Internet connection.
The router. Which film producer, whose award-winning films include Midnight Express and The Killing Fields, was knighted in 1995 and given a life peerage in 97?
Jenkins.
No, Putnam. Which Hungarian composer and pianist wrote 3 volumes of piano works entitled Years of Pilgrimage or Année de Pèlerinage between 1836 and 1877?
Liszt.
Yep. What term originally applied to American Protestants who insisted on the absolute correctness of the Bible now refers to members of any religion who make no concessions to modern developments in thought or customs?
Orthodox.
No, fundamentalists. The building of a British city's classical and elegant new town was begun in 1767 by James Craig. Other architects, such as Robert Adam and William Playfair, were also involved in its development. Which city?
Milton Keynes.
Edinburgh. Mercury Prize-winning band who take their name from a computer keyboard shortcut went straight to #1 in the album charts with their second album, This Is All Yours, released in September 2014. Which band?
Control-Alt-Delete.
No, Alt-J, actually. What French word is used for the small pickled gherkins that are served with pâté or as an accompaniment to drinks?
Cornichon.
Correct. Which American city was home to the Ashcan School of Artists between 1908 and the First World War?
Chicago.
New York. Doris Salcedo's shibboleth, installed in 2007, was a fissure zigzagging down the entire length of the Turbine Hall in which London art gallery?
Tate Modern.
Tate Modern is correct. One pass, Gareth. Claudia Winkleman hosted Radio 2's Friday Night Art Show and the Great British Sewing Bee. You have a total of 16 points. And Diane again now, please. And you start out with 10 points. 22, still the score to beat. Here we go, 2.5 minutes of general knowledge. The prologue to which Shakespeare tragedy introduces 2 households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene?
Romeo and Juliet.
Yes. Which Latin phrase that literally means to sickness is used to refer to an action that's been repeated so often it's become tiresome?
Ad nauseam.
Yeah. Who was the commander-in-chief of the American forces at the Siege of Yorktown in 1781, the last major encounter of the American War of Independence?
Cornwallis.
No, Washington. What is the title of the sequel to the television series Life on Mars, named after another David Bowie song?
Ashes to Ashes.
Yeah. In what form of alternative medicine, originally called zone therapy, is pressure placed on specific parts of the body, especially the feet, to promote a feeling of well-being?
Shiatsu.
Reflexology. In 1923, Shinjiro Tori founded a distillery at Yamazaki to first produce a spirit on a commercial scale in Japan. Which spirit?
Whiskey.
Yep. Which river flows for about 120 miles from its source on Ben Louis to the North Sea and is the longest in Scotland?
The D.
The Tay. Which lizard that lives on dry heathland and dunes is one of the 3 lizards native to mainland Britain, along with the common lizard and the slow worm?
Green lizard.
Sand lizard. A big riot in Trafalgar Square in London's West End on the 31st of March 1990 was a protest against the introduction of what tax?
Poll tax.
Yes. In which Oscar-winning film did Lieutenant John Dunbar, played by Kevin Costner, assume the Native American name that was the film's title?
Dances with Wolves.
Yes. Which American author's 57th novel is Mr. Mercedes, a thriller that opens in 2009 as the recession tightens its grip on an unnamed Midwestern city?
Pass.
William Morris was the principal exponent of a Victorian artistic movement that valued good design and craftsmanship over mechanisation and mass production. Which movement?
Arts and Crafts.
Yes. Whose Symphony No. 1 was completed in 1876 when the composer was 43 and dubbed Beethoven's 10th by some critics?
Bruckner.
Brahms. What term used to refer to worldly, temporal or lay matters rather than those concerned with religion or the church comes from the Latin for generation or age?
Temporal.
Secular. Baby Love, which topped the charts in November 1964, was a Motown group's only UK No. 1. Which group?
The Supremes.
Yes. What was the original profession of the playwright and short story writer Anton Chekhov, which he continued alongside his literary career?
Doctor.
Yes. Ray Davies's The Village Green Preservation Society was the title music of a television series starring Sue Johnson, Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders, set around the Women's Guild in a small West Country town. Which series?
Jam and Jerusalem.
Yes. Which British overseas territory in the Caribbean has a name that comes from the Spanish or French for eel, thought to be a reference to its elongated shape?
Anguillas.
Yes, Anguilla. 1 pass. Stephen King wrote Mr. Mercedes. You've scored, Diane, a total of 21 points. And now David Greenwood again, please. And you start out, David, with 12 points. 22 is the score to beat. Here we go. Deborah, the Dowager Duchess of Devonshire, who died in September 2014, was the youngest and last survivor of which sisters?
Mitford.
Yep. Which politician's remains were interred at Blaydon Parish Churchyard, Oxfordshire, in January 1965?
Churchill.
Yes, an experimental camp on Brownsea Island in Poole Harbour in 1907 led directly to the establishment of which organisation?
Boy Scouts.
Yes, what name for a place of religious retreat in India comes from the Sanskrit for religious exertion?
Ashram.
Yes, in which television comedy series do David Mitchell and Robert Webb star as 2 socially dysfunctional young men who have nothing in common other than sharing a South London flat?
Peep Show.
Yes. What is the title of the Arab book on sexuality, first translated by Sir Richard Burton in 1886? John Peel used the title for his late-night show on Radio London in 1967.
The Arabian Nights.
The Perfumed Garden. In Greek mythology, the 100 eyes of a giant killed by Hermes was set into the peacock's tail by the goddess Hera. The giant was known as Panoptes, meaning all-seeing, and by what other name?
Argus.
Correct. What name was given to the series of unmanned American space probes launched from 1958 onwards? The first 5 were intended to investigate the moon.
Gemini.
Pioneer. Which English city has the UK's only locally operated telephone service? Its cream-coloured telephone boxes do not feature the crown, unlike their red counterparts.
Pass.
What was the name of the pioneering Soviet director and film theorist who directed the classic 1925 silent movie The Battleship Potemkin?
Eisenstein.
Yes, the name of a Scandinavian spirit distilled from grain or potatoes comes from the Latin for water of life. What spirit?
Aquavit.
Yes. What region of the Earth's upper atmosphere takes its name from the charged atoms in it that affect the propagation of radio waves?
Ionosphere.
Yes. Which composer succeeded Sir Peter Maxwell Davies as Master of the Queen's Music in July 2014? She's the first woman to hold the post.
Judith Weir.
Yes. Which band released the album Long Road Out of Eden in 2007, their first studio album since The Long Run in 1979?
Pass.
What botanical name for the African lily comes from Greek words for love and flower?
Pass.
Stockport Railway Viaduct, one of the largest brick structures in Britain, features in the background of several paintings by a northern artist born in Stretford in 1887. Who was he?
Lowry.
Yes. The title character of an 1857 novel by Gustave Flaubert is an adulterous wife who commits suicide by poisoning herself. Who was she?
Madame Bovary.
Yes. Abkhazia and South Ossetia are separatist regions of which country whose sovereignty is disputed with Russia?
Georgia.
Georgia is correct. You had 3 passes. Agapanthus is the botanical name for that African lily. The Eagles was the band that released the album Long Road Out of Eden. And that English city that has cream-coloured telephone boxes is Kingston upon Hull. David, you have a total now of 25 points. Now, it's going to be a very tight finish. 2 more finalists to go, each of them having already scored 15 points. Marianne first, please. And 25, of course, the score to beat. So, well, let's see if you can do it. 2.5 minutes of general knowledge. Here we go. Which Hollywood star married the Lebanese-born human rights lawyer Amal Al-Madin in Venice in September 2014?
Clooney.
Yes. For what place of worship is Masjid an Arabic name?
Mosque.
Yes. Whose sculpture Balloon Dog Orange set a record for a work by a living artist when it was sold at auction in November 2013 for $58.4 million?
Jeff Koons.
Yes. What name is given to the identification of a person through unique characteristics like fingerprints or iris patterns? It's increasingly used in security checks at places such as airports.
Biometrics.
Yes, the Bella Veja Accords, named after the hunting lodge where they were signed in December 1991, laid the groundwork for the breakup of which country?
Soviet Union.
Yes, for what local culinary specialty is the tiny Northumberland fishing village of Crasta well known?
Herrings.
No, kippers or cured herrings. Who won an Oscar for Best Actress in a leading role for playing an illiterate woman on trial for war crimes in the film The Reader?
Winslet.
Yes. Which composer who was born in Pesaro in 1792 was nicknamed Signor Crescendo because of his use of repeated phrases that gradually increased in volume?
Rossini.
Yes. Which children's television cartoon character lived at number 52 Festive Road, a very ordinary street in an ordinary part of town? He escaped into a fantasy world via a mysterious fancy dress shop in each episode.
Mr. Ben.
Yep. What term for the centre of an area of intense or violent activity dates back to 1946 and refers to the point immediately beneath an atomic explosion?
Maelstrom.
Ground Zero. Whose album Back to Black, which topped the charts in January 2007, features the single Rehab?
Amy Winehouse.
Yeah. Which of the 12 apostles is traditionally believed to have travelled to India and died in 72 AD in Chennai, where there is now a shrine to him?
Peter.
St. Thomas. Which romantic poet's first major collection of verse, Hours of Idleness, appeared in 1807?
Shelley.
Byron. Gazzo, Trivello and Peak are all types of what law enforcement device?
Truncheon.
Speed cameras. Which seabird that has the largest wingspan in relation to its weight of any bird is also known as the man-o'-war bird or pirate bird?
Albatross.
The frigate bird. Which country topped the medals table at the 2014 Commonwealth Games with a total of 174, including 58 gold medals?
Australia.
England. In the novel by George Orwell, whose first entry in his secret diary is dated the 4th of April, 1984?
Winston Smith.
Yeah. How is Carl Pilkington known in the title of the books and comedy television travel series that feature him?
Englishman abroad.
Nearly an idiot abroad. And I fear that was a rather important one, because, Marianne, you now have 25 points. And Liz, again now, please. And as we know, you have 15 points. And as we know, there are 2 people with 25 points. So 2.5 minutes of general knowledge starting now. Which celebrated writer of children's fiction and nonsense verse invented the words galumph and frabjous?
Edward Lear.
Lewis Carroll. Which 1968 film starring Jane Fonda in the title role, featuring Milo O'Shea as the evil Duran Duran, Anita Pallenberg as the Black Queen and Marcel Marceau as Professor Ping?
Barbarella.
Yeah. What word meaning bored or unimpressed through overfamiliarity comes from the past participle of the French verb for to exhaust by enjoyment?
Ennuyé.
Blasé. Which hill in the Sidlaw Hills, northeast of Perth, is the traditional site of Macbeth's castle and of his final defeat?
Elsnore.
Dunsinane. The television series Our Zoo is about the Mottershead family who founded which zoo in the 1930s?
Chester.
Yes. Which town north of Paris gives its name to a type of whipped cream?
Chantilly.
Correct. The best-selling romance author Nora Roberts writes crime novels set in a mid-21st century New York City under what pseudonym?
Pass.
The name of which plant, similar to mosses, comes from the resemblance of certain species to the lobes of an organ in the human body?
Sphagnum.
Liverwurts, which rock and roll pioneer's version of Johnny B. Good is among the songs from around the world included on a golden record sent into outer space on the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 probes in 1977?
Chuck Berry.
Yes, who edited and wrote the material for the weekly literary periodical Master Humphrys' Clock that first appeared in April 1840? 2 of his novels went on to appear in it in serial form.
Dickens.
Yeah. Which of the muses, whose name means she of many songs, is variously credited as being the inventor of the lyre and of geometry?
Calliope.
No, Polymnia. What is the name of the Israeli pianist and conductor who founded the West Eastern Divan Orchestra in 1999 with the Palestinian academic Edward Said?
Barenboim.
Yes, which gulf and inlet of the Ionian Sea forms the hollow part of the boot of Italy?
Liguria.
Taranto. By what name is the 15th century Prince Henry of Portugal known because of his sponsorship of voyages of discovery?
Navigator.
Yes, a rapid toxic increase of algae on the surface of water giving the appearance of coloured scum is known by the initials HAB. The H and A represent harmful algal. What does the B stand for?
Pass.
Who was elected President of the United States in 1928 in a landslide victory? He got 444 electoral college votes to his rival's 87, but was defeated in 1932 by an even bigger margin.
Coolidge.
Hoover. What was the original wording of the sign erected by the property developer Harry Chandler in the Santa Monica Mountains above Los Angeles in 1923 to publicise his housing development below?
Hollywood Town.
Hollywood Land. Who was appointed Professor of Drawing at the Royal Academy of Arts in 2011, along with Fiona Ray, who was appointed Professor of Paintings? They are the first female professors in the institution's history.
Pass.
Well, I can tell you, because you're out of time, it was Tracy Emin. And your other 2 passes, Liz, the HAB, Bloom, was the missing word there. And Nora Roberts wrote crime novels under the pseudonym J.D. Robb. You've scored, Liz, 22 points.
Thank you.
Well, the first round was tight, and the second round was even tighter. And I can't remember a result quite like this in a Mastermind Grand Final. Here are all the scores. In 6th place with 16 points, Gareth Williams. 5th place, 21 points, Diane Halligan. Joint 3rd place, 22 points apiece, Liz Gore and John Bayman. 2nd place with 25 points and 3 passes, David Greenwood. 1st place with 25 points and no passes. The 2014 Mastermind champion is Marianne Fairthorne. There you go. You were shaking your head throughout that programme. Every time you scored a point, you looked puzzled that you had, as if you had no chance of doing it, and you did brilliantly.
Yeah, it's certainly quite a shock, yeah.
Well, you looked shocked all the way through. Did you plan it that you were not going to pass under any circumstances? Was that part of your strategy?
No, not really. I don't think I planned very well, you know. I'm not sure there was actually a conscious strategy there at all.
Well, in that case, stick with it, because it pays, doesn't it? No strategy is the strategy. Congratulations, absolutely brilliant. Well done. So, Marianne is, of course, our winner, our new champion, but the search will start again later this year to find another Mastermind champion. And if you think that could be you, with or without a strategy, then do visit us online at bbc.co.uk/mastermind, or you can follow us on Twitter @MastermindQuiz. And do join us next time for more Masterminds. Thanks for watching. Good night.